Advocating for apartment living. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian Heise here, and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. Got my stein of coffee in hand, and I thought we would have a look at something a little different today. We've looked at a lot of articles and discussed a lot of the issues surrounding the construction industry here in Australia, particularly focusing on apartments. But here's an article I just discovered recently from the ABC, where they're discussing some of the benefits and advantages of living in apartments and why people are really moving closer to the city. And this is a Brisbane example, so it's very close to home for me, literally. And I thought, why not go through it? Because there are some advantages for people wanting to move to an apartment, and the big one is commuting. Now, commuting nightmares prompt more families to rethink the dream of a big suburban home. So commuting is horrific. Now, I would argue that perhaps we need to look at our population growth over the last 18 years. I think it's gone up by a quarter since 2000, the last time I checked. And perhaps our infrastructure has not kept pace. And the problem is, with infrastructure projects, with the scale that they are, you can't just flip a switch and have them turned on right away. You can't just build a huge infrastructure project straight away. There's a limit to our capacity to do it as a nation. There's only so many people we have of that skill base to be able to do that. If you try and overheat it, then what do you think happens? We've seen what happens in our apartment construction industry when it's been overheated. So let's have a read. Daily commuting times have risen in almost every capital city in Australia, and as house prices continue to rise, experts say more families are opting to live in apartments to beat the gridlock. I mean, think about that. If you're going, an hour to work or 2 hours to work back and forth every day, and you've got a young child, you're not going to be able to spend any time with your kid. You're not going to be able to spend any time with your kid. As annoying as they can be, you want to spend time with them. I'm quite fortunate because I work from home now, but even when we had our office, and we'd bring the kids to work, we did that for a few years, and then eventually when Rachel was staying at home with them and I was at work, just for me the commuting at half an hour a day there and back, that added up. It did. So let me know in the comments, guys, how long is your commute? Are you managing, any of you working from home? Do you have that benefit of having the home office so you can have the kids around, they can annoy you, you can get stuff done? Or are you struggling on the commute? Or if you are commuting, what do you do to make it productive? Be interesting to see. I've got one, because I grew up down the Gold Coast. That's about an hour's train ride from Brisbane. And I used to commute up in the train for university. And I remember one time, it's story tangent again, I was sitting on the train and I had my knees up against the chair in front of me. And, so I was sitting there and I was reading something and I ended up passing out. And I woke up just as I had arrived in the South Brisbane train station, just as the train arrived, when they go ding dong, arriving in such and such station. And then I said, oh crap, I'm here. If I miss it, it'll be a pain. So I got up to run to the exit doors. And what happened was my legs were asleep. They weren't working because they were propped up. So I promptly fell, literally face first onto the ground in the carriage. Everyone's looking at me stunned, and I crawled out of the carriage until my legs were working again. But I got to my station. That's how you do it. That's how you do it, guys. So yes, rail commuting is an option too. So that's my experience. And then just driving up and down, because when I studied, I was, for a portion I was living at home. I was up here, and by home I mean with my parents, and they were down the Gold Coast, so I would have to commute up to my job up in Brisbane and to architecture school in Brisbane, and that was an hour each way, and that just got you. It really just got you. So I am not a fan of commuting, and I can understand why that can be a driver for people to want to come closer to the city. The problem is, what confidence does anyone have in buying apartments now? Maybe you rent instead, so you can get out. There you go. That's a good solution. So, in 2016, more than 2.3 million Australians were living in apartments, and parents with children made up almost 44% of the families in apartments, according to the ABS. The ABS found nearly 1 in 10 children aged 4 or younger lived in an apartment. Travis Pearson and his wife Kylie are one of those families after selling their home in Clayfield on Brisbane's north side 4 years ago and moving to an apartment at West End in the inner city. Well, you know what? Let's bring up a Google Earth, because I honestly did not think they were that close. Clayfield is not that far, now that I think about it, at all. But there you go, I'm going to West End. That's a big jump. West End has really been densified with a lot of the unit apartments. So what we'll do is, let's jump to Google Earth, guys, and we will have a look here at Brisbane. You can see I've got all these wonderful apartments here. Okay, so for those of you that aren't familiar with Brisbane, this is the CBD here of the city. Here is West End, and they have Clayfield. That's where they moved from Clayfield to here. Okay, remember that when we were reading the article, because I consider Clayfield and part of the inner ring of suburbs. It's pretty much inner city. Clayfield is not that far out at all. And you got the train station there. Okay, wow. I guess I never thought Clayfield was that isolated. I lived in Wooloowin over here when I was a student. Wow. Okay, so they've moved to West End. West End is the trendy, very trendy part of the city being gentrified. We actually had an office along here, along this street. I think down here, one of these streets, we had our office. Previous ones. Not the last one we had. You got the convention centre. You got South Bank all along here. It's really nice. You've got the State Library and Art Gallery all here. It's fantastic. So it's a really good part of the city. It is, but it's very, very expensive. Very expensive. Lots of apartments are going up. It's getting gentrified. They've cleared out a lot of the homeless. You've got a lot of Indigenous people, particularly around Musgrave Park here. So this is a park that I wouldn't go in at night, to be honest, and I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't. You hear a lot of issues there, and a lot of crime and vagrancies. But the whole suburb is going to change. It was a trendy place where when you were a student you'd go to, but now it's getting gentrified. So now there we go. We're back. Good. So let's have a look. Clicking on the wrong things everywhere. So Clayfield. My wife and I both grew up believing you had to buy a home and land and live out in the suburbs to be happy. And that's what you should aspire to, Mr. Pearson said. We did that, but found we weren't happy. I was spending a lot of time maintaining the home, a lot of time travelling and commuting to and from work. Well, yeah. The 44-year-old nuclear medicine scientist catches public transport to work at a Brisbane hospital, and his 7-year-old daughter, Quinn, walks to the local primary school. Particularly in West End, they are looking at, I think they've got to improve the amount of schooling, because the number of apartments that they've got there, it's crazy. It really is. The family owns a car, but it only clocks up around 10,000 kilometres a year. There you go. That's what you need when you're living that close to everything. We'd be happy to stay here until retirement because we've got everything we need around us, with the shops, the community, and close access to hospitals, Mr. Pearson said. So living in the suburbs can be quite isolating for parents because you don't have access to as many facilities, events, and other things you do as when you're living closer to the city. I mean, okay, I live further out than Clayfield. We go into the city probably once a week. I mean, we go to West End for church once a week, and then we'll often go along South Bank. Afterwards, go to the State Library with the kids. We'll drive in there. I guess I don't feel isolated at all. I don't feel isolated at all. And, working from home, there's more chance of you getting a bit stir-crazy. You need to go out. So you can tell if I'm making a video with a 7-Eleven coffee, I've had to make the mission. Going a bit crazy. So, growth areas need better planning. University of Queensland demographer Dr. Ellen Charles Edwards said the move to apartments for families was a growing nationwide trend. We are noticing more and more people choosing to sacrifice space for accessibility, she said. The conventional assumption of apartments is that they'll be filled by singles or couples with no kids, but increasingly we're seeing families there. Yes, see, that's the problem. That's the problem with this, is that the infrastructure hasn't kept up. They thought all these apartments, wouldn't be full of families, but they're starting to be, and now Brisbane's having to build a new school. New school in the middle of the city. Sydney, I think, Rachel was telling me they've built their first high-rise school or multi-story school like in Japan. Those type of things, because they just can't get the land anymore. Dr. Charles Edwards said young families looking for a comfortable-sized house with a yard in the outer suburbs often had to sacrifice proximity to work to get their ideal property. There we go. That's the problem. That's the issue there, proximity to work. That's the problem I no longer have. That is literally, I have to walk down 4 steps to get to the studio in the back here, which, frankly, it's probably one of the better decisions we've made for our mental health and stress in the last few years. There's no perfect location or a perfect location at an affordable price. So often we find as people's families grow, they need more space and they trade off accessibility to the job with affordable housing. Well, yes. Yep. I mean, we're quite unique with what we got. We got a real fixer-upper. It's literally, I made a list of all the things I need to repair here, and it's terrible. But we're pretty close to anything. We're close to the Gold Coast. We're close to Brisbane. And we're right near the Asian part of the city, so you get good food, really good food. So this is part of the broader planning issues. Well, we have to create quality places and quality communities. It's no longer really enough to dump housing somewhere. You need to think about public transport, you need to think about educational facilities, and also what sort of community and recreation facilities you build in new places as well. Data from the annual Household Income and Labour Dynamics in Australia HILDA survey found workers spend an average of 4.5 hours a week commuting, a rise of 23% from 2002, 4.5 hours a week commuting. Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane have the longest average daily commute time, 65 minutes or more, while the ACT experiences the biggest surge, blowing out by 65%. Elisa Forsyth and her husband Grant and their daughter Harper live in a 450 square metre 4-bedroom home in Ripley, about 42 kilometres west of Brisbane. Okay, let's jump here. So Ripley, where is that? That's over here, isn't it? Near Springfield Lakes. No, okay. Okay, wow. That's really far out, isn't it? That's really far out. There you go. So it's south of Ipswich. You wouldn't want to be commuting into Brisbane from there, would you? You'd go along the Centenary Highway. That would be a nightmare every morning. Oh, shit, I hope they don't do that. We really enjoy living here because of the space, the area being quiet, and also the fact of it being a lot cheaper because there's not a lot of infrastructure in here now. Oh, good. Miss Forsyth drives to Acacia Ridge in Brisbane each day for work. She said she hoped to eventually to move into a job closer to home. So where's she driving? So she's going there from Ripley to Acacia Ridge, which is over here. Hang on. Acacia Ridge, Queensland. Oh yeah, I know that. So she's going... Oh, she's not too bad. So she's going from Ripley over to here to Acacia Ridge, so she could go along the Centenary Highway and get in. But still, that would be a hell of a commute every day. I wouldn't want to be doing that every day. But see, that's the thing. People have to. The commute is about 40 minutes one way in good traffic, but if there's heavy traffic, it can take a lot longer. Yeah. Yep. I'm happy where I am at the moment, but if something came up and it was perfect, it was either in Ipswich or Springfield, I would definitely consider giving the commute and that my daughter will go to school here. Yes. Well, I don't blame her. So she's not going to there. Where is it? It's over here somewhere more. Come on, guys. It's over here. That's her commute. More families are choosing to live closer to where they work, yes. But Ipswich is in trouble too. Its economy isn't doing too well. So gaps in public transport network. The Queensland government said the southeast Queensland region's population set to grow to around 5.5 million by 2041. It's predicted satellite cities like Ripley, population 1,405 in 2016 census, would swell to 120,000 people by 2031. University of Queensland transport planning specialist Professor Neil Spee said the public transport network needed strengthening to accommodate rapid population growth in coming decades. Yes, the cities are growing, but there are areas that have 5,000 people now. They're going to have hundreds of thousands of people. How are we going to move them around, he said. There's not much discussion about how we're going to move 200,000 people from these areas into where the jobs are. So yes, that is certainly a concern, guys. You know, I mean, this is a photograph in Ripley. I mean, it's a nice suburban neighborhood. But this is the thing. How many people are buying these houses and they're empty all day? How many of them are buying them and they're empty all day? You know? I guess the advantage we have with working from home is we're kind of not tied. And with home, we've got two things. The distance ed we do and working from home means we're not tied to a location. We're tied probably because our school is Queensland based. We're stuck in the state, but you know, if we want to go rural, we want to go somewhere else, we can. It's not as hard. Just need to get this house sorted first. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think. How bad is your commute? Do you think the government or planning needs to address this? Do you think they will address it? Or do you think it'll come after the fact? I reckon it'll be after the fact. Let me know what you think, guys. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all later. Take care.